evening, everyone. The Ranter is back for yet another one of his rambling diatribes on the politics of the day. Now, I have to admit that today I was feeling a bit down concerning our politics, feeling a little bit of a hopelessness streak, and it's hard to really describe as to why. Um, it's just that you hear so much of this gloom and doom, where no one really wants to be hopeful. Everyone's all cynical and jaded, and I can be too at times. Hell, I survived 8th grade going through being cynical. But feeling this weird sense of you know futility and hopelessness, that I was just how many steps am I away to just saying fuck it and being apathetic and not giving a shit anymore, and whether or not that's actually healthy or not. Then take a nap and eat something, and then suddenly I'm all better. Well, not really all better, but better in terms of I'm back being pissed than I am being hopeless. So some of that is external stuff, but other parts of it, excuse me, is that for someone like me who grew up going through the school in early and mid '80s, during those early years, before you got your ABCs and your 1, 2, 3s down in your early educations, they had you singing patriotic songs. They had you, they fostered that little seed of idealism and nationalism. They had you doing the Pledge of Allegiance before we even understand what the words mean. Just to us, they told us to stare at a piece of cloth hanging there and put your hand on the heart and, okay, well, I'll do this. Barely pronouncing any of the words, but okay, I guess that works. And it's nap time. But so you go through life, and obviously you get older, and your education becomes more and more nuanced and more and deeper. And then you do feel the sense of this idealism growing beyond the songs when you're learning through civics and social studies what it is to be in the United States, our history in the United States. So, then it comes out of you on your own that you want to learn about this, you want to learn about that, you want to understand our laws, you want to understand the civics, the functionality of our government. Okay? I mean, before you even become a political geek, I was always into history, so that was another facet of it for me. So, you go through all this, and you go through this idealism of like, things might get shitty, but the system will self-correct itself. You know what I mean? Well, now, for the past few years, and it's not necessarily because of Trump, but anything else has gone beyond Trump. I mean, if you want to be honest about it, you see those idealistic ideas of the shining city on the hill, that's just popping and popping and popping and just disappearing from existence. So then what you have left is just a feeling that the government that you are a part of as a citizen has so much corrupt pieces that you don't know how it can self-correct itself, because so many interests want to keep it the way it is, or make it worse, or be just for what they want out for themselves. And it's weird, at least for me, because my initial anger was towards the impeachment and the vote for no witnesses. Because like I said in the last video, I already know what the verdict was. We knew what the verdict was. We knew going in what the verdict was. It was just sort of an exercise at this point. But them not doing witnesses just makes it more and more blatant that the idealism of even the process of impeachment, process of this noble duty that the senators are supposed to deal with, is also full of shit. I mean, you see that when all these reports of what the Republican senators were doing while the House managers were trying to make their case, some of them were just leaving the room when they're not supposed to be leaving the room. You know, they're bringing little fidget thingies in the books, and it's just. And I made this plea to the Republicans 2 videos ago that for your own self-preservation, at least show the appearance of fairness. That say that you want witnesses, say that you look at the evidence, and still going through all that, you still believe that he should be acquitted. And that actually would be better for them and better for the president in the long run, instead of just shutting it down cold and just saying, despite the fact that the majority of Americans polled wanted witnesses to be seen, defying the will of the people. So there you go with that. So the next video, I went from my advice to Republicans to the advice to the Democrats to use this, because what is a crisis? Crisis is chaos and it's opportunity. Well, we have the chaos down pat. Here's the opportunity. You just got 51 Republican senators saying fuck you to the American people. You're not going to get witnesses. You're not going to get a fair trial. We're going to protect our patron. And the more galling thing about this is that you had at least three senators, as far as I know, who've gone on record as to explain why they didn't want witnesses, saying in various levels that Trump did what he was being impeached for. Senator Alexander, Senator Rubio, Senator Portman. Portman said it was wrong and immoral what Trump did. Alexander said that the Democrats made their case for impeachment. They made it. Rubio said that they were impeachable offenses. They rose to a level of it being impeachable. But they couldn't do it. They couldn't vote for witnesses. Alexander said something to the effect that, Trump will never do it again. Rubio said that even though these rose to a level of being impeachable, that doesn't necessarily mean you should remove him from office or execute the impeachment. What's the point of impeachment then? One of the quotations that Lamar Alexander said in terms that he didn't believe that the Senate should substitute their judgment over the will of the people, paraphrasing. So why is there an impeachment process to begin with? Because one of the things I got tired of hearing, and I kept hearing it over and over and over again, is that impeachment is going to nullify the will of the people. You're going to nullify their votes. Doesn't that happen anyway in any impeachment? Were the Republicans worrying about nullifying the votes of Democrats who voted Bill Clinton into office to try to remove him? I didn't quite hear that. I didn't quite hear that that worry and concern for posterity. So that's all crap. And these 3 senators admit that he did what was accused of, that it is impeachable, it was immoral and wrong, and the House members fulfilled their case. They proved it, and still, they cannot bring themselves to stand up against their patron, even to the point of just doing witnesses, because I don't give a shit if they're going to vote to acquit him. I'm not surprised that they're going to vote to acquit him, but at least having the appearance of fairness, which would make it better for them. But whatever. These 3 senators pretty much gave you the truth here. That even though he did things that they consider to be impeachable, that any other person would be impeached for, they won't push to impeach him or remove him from office. Okay? So, never mind that. And towards the defense that they used for Trump, Joni Ernst pretty much brings out the cat, takes the cat out of the bag when she says, "Oh, I wonder what what Iowa's going to be like for Biden now, because that was the whole point of the defense, the whole defense. In fact, this whole thing, really, Joni Ernst summed it up perfectly. This is about how Biden is going to go in Iowa, or how he's going to go through this election, if he's going to be nominated or not. I mean, call to Zelensky, the machinations in Ukraine, this faux worry, concern about corruption involving Hunter Biden and Burisma, that wasn't a concern in 2018, that wasn't a concern in 2017, but somehow the year before an election, it's suddenly a concern. You see, here's what's going to be the test. If they truly are concerned about corruption of Burisma and what Hunter Biden was doing for his $50,000 a month. Oh, by the way, why isn't anyone asking what was Pam Bondi, one of Trump's defenders, what was she doing when she was getting $115,000 a month to be consulted about human trafficking in Qatar? How much does she know about human trafficking that she gets $115,000 a month? But I guess that doesn't matter because Pam Bondi isn't running against Donald Trump. So therefore, this is not a scandal, now is it? So, but the true test, if this is truly something we're going to be concerned about, is that Lindsey Graham blurted out, like he blurts out, that he's going to have an investigation on Hunter Biden and Joe Biden after this impeachment thing. Good. Do it. Do it. I'm of the camp that says that if you didn't really do anything wrong and someone wants to investigate you, yeah, go and investigate them. And since the investigation powers of the Republican Party has been so gosh darn successful, especially when concerning Hillary Clinton, the gang that can't shoot straight, go ahead and try with Joe Biden. If you're really concerned about what he was doing, what his son was doing, then yeah, investigate him. People want to say, like someone like me, that you don't want Joe Biden investigated during an election. I said no. Get investigate him all you want. I mean, Hillary Clinton was getting investigated in 2016. Donald Trump was getting investigated at the end of 2016. So that's nothing new for any of this bullshit. My problem was trying to tie his investigation into a defense for Trump's impeachment. Because these are two separate entities. Like saying they kept saying that they wanted to call Hunter Biden, or say they were going to trade. If you want John Bolton to be testifying, then we should have Hunter Biden testifying. The problem with that is that Hunter Biden has nothing to say in the matter of Donald Trump and his administration and what they were doing and why they were withholding aid from Ukraine. What can he provide other than you trying to slam him on camera to discourage his dad from being successful running for president? But again, Lindsey Graham also said when the impeachment was just an inquiry investigation in the House before they got serious about it, that Lindsey Graham said that in the Senate he was going to go and do an investigation on Hillary Clinton. How did that go? Because we haven't heard too much about that. In the latest DOJ investigation of Hillary Clinton in the past few weeks proved once again nothing, and they quietly dismissed it. We didn't hear too much about Donald Trump about that, nor his cronies. That once again, they couldn't get the evil witch in her pantsuit. So all of that, of course, was pissing me off. But I still felt a little bit hopeful. I still felt hopeful because I did see the political calculation of having these 51 rattlesnakes commit suicide politically by not allowing a full and fair trial of their patron. Because Democrats were going to be cranking out attack ads on every one of the sons of bitches and daughters of bitches that are in office who did not want a fair trial. Because if someone who's just a retail worker at a grocery store can figure this out, political scientists that work for the DNC and these liberal think tanks sure as hell figured out before I did. So, a living hell is awaiting them. And you know one of the reasons why that we're not going to forget this so easy? Because good old Donald Trump is going to crow about this. He's going to brag about his success and his defeating of the Democrats. He's going to talk about it almost every time he's going to be on camera, which means we, who are pissed off, who was the majority of the Americans who wanted witnesses, 75 to 82% of Americans polled, including 70% of Republicans, I might add, you'll remind us of this. And it will remind us of those 51 Republicans that helped cover you up, Mr. President. And we'll be reminded of how you withhold documentation and you bragged about it in Davos. And the reminder for Democrats, independents, voters, people in office, people who's running for office, to turn the Senate back to Democrats, you need 6 seats to be taken away. That's the minimum. If you want that veto-proof 2/3 vote that you kind of need if you want to remove someone from office, Democrats need to turn 20 seats. These 51 Republicans denied a fair trial at impeachment. Run with that. And see what you can do between now and November. But that aside, so I had a little bit of hope because of that, because that is that one political calculation, that one little ray of sunshine in this whole thing, the hubris that they presented, that they're just going to shut it down and walk away, and they think they won in the short term, which they did. They won in the short term. We are going to take the hit. That's just the way it is. It's our job to get back up. But we will. We'll get back up. But here's the thing that got me feeling hopeless. That one of the things that I keep talking about on here, and even before I was doing YouTube, is the focus is removing Donald Trump, beating him in the election, more so than removing him from office in an impeachment. There was so much around Trump that defeating him would change things, change the environment of our politics. Because so many things that are going on today is because of Trump, directly or indirectly. There are so many people out there who has so much dark, evil, disgusting, racist, misogynistic bullshit in their heads that they were ashamed about to ever say in public, outside of maybe a group of friends who think the same way. But because of Donald Trump coming out and his vicarious ability to make his scumbaggery immaturity so viable and so appealing to people, says, hey, if he can do it, so can I. Then you got people who are doing these groups, want to go around the country as a religious group to condemning and disparaging and slandering and what a better adjective, just a gay bash. The gay bash in the name of Trump. Or how many people want to go and consider themselves volunteers of the immigration services, and they want to get at them illegals. How many weak-minded people? And I'm not talking about regular Trump supporters here. Leave them alone. But those weak people who hear Donald Trump speak and say the shit that he says about his enemies, and then decide to go and commit violence in his name. Like little Patrick in El Paso. Like the Coast Guard lieutenant who was stockpiling weapons, who had his own enemy list of Trump rivals and Trump critics. His superfan that was mailing bombs to Trump's rivals and Trump's critics. The tolerance and the acceptance of hate that Trump permeates around him, which is its own ideology on its own beyond being Republican. Because whatever you think about the Republican Party, right or wrong, here or gone, they are tainted by this man. They are just defiled to the point where their personal political careers are so bent into appeasing the Trump base that they cannot give him a single drop of consequence for his actions. As we already seen with 3 senators that admit that he did impeachable offenses, but they just can't bring themselves. And one of those goddamn people is retiring. He won't have a career after this. So with all that, what gave me the feeling of hopelessness, of futility, is what the goddamn fucking Democrats are doing to themselves. The goal is defeating Donald Trump, defeating the specter around him that allows people who think what they thought was shameful to now it's all acceptable, so I'm going to go ahead and do it because I'm going to make America great again. That's shit that needs to be defeated in the election. And the Democratic Party, the DNC, staffers on Bernie's campaign are fucking it up. You all are fucking it up. As I look from camera over here, which is where my actual TV's over here, and I'm watching the Iowa caucus, we're having problems with the results because quality control? Really? Is it really that close, or is that really that far for establishment candidates? And maybe there's some people that the establishment don't want to be leading in the polls. So we're going to have these little technical difficulties until we can finagle things one way or the other. What the fuck are you doing? The goal is Donald Trump and removing him by the election. Not this infighting. Because this is beyond just candidate versus candidate and having policy differences. This is trying to cut people off at the knees, to sabotage people, to not allow it to be an honest competition just for the nomination before we even get to Donald Trump. That is my problem now. That is my problem now. Because you get too much distrust and too much disunity within the Democratic Party, within independent thinkers, disenfranchised Republicans with these candidates. No one is inspiring. No one. And those people who are close to being inspiring, that you can imagine getting yourself behind, then you got a dozen or so people ready to trash that person to the ground in favor of their own candidate. It's a simple concept. You support the nominee, whoever it is, to back them. But you got people who get themselves in front of cameras. I'm not talking about politicians, I'm talking about media. media speculation of how someone is electable or someone is not electable. Oh, Pete Buttigieg can't do it because he's not electable because in the South, he's gay. Or he's not electable because he doesn't have good answers when dealing with black folk asking upon certain events that happened nearby his town that he did not have an adequate answer for. That my pick, Amy Klobuchar, also did not have a good answer for because proving that she's not ready for prime time when she is approached by someone talking about uh, a black guy who got convicted of a crime that turned out to be innocent, and her answer was she was not aware of any irregularities. That's not how you answer that question. That's not that. Again, a dumb retail person. You asked me that question. Well, I am deeply sorry that has happened. I'm I might not have known the details of it then, but I'm surely regret that that happened to him, and I hope he has a good life while he's freed. And something similar to that. I just pulled that out of my head, and I'm not running for shit. But if you're gonna give the deer in the headlights look when someone's giving you a hard question about your past, then you know the way of Kamala Harris, because she looked bright and shiny, and she was good on camera, and she had a little bit of buzz to her, but then she had a little bit too many things in her past that she couldn't answer adequately for. One of the things that I had a problem with at the start of this election cycle was that there was too many people running for president that had to be apologizing immediately for something that they did. That's not a good start. That's not a good start. If you have skeletons in your closet, you better be prepared to explain them. And explain them well, because they're going to come up. The DNC wants to anoint someone, or at the very least wants to make sure someone else does not get in. That is not the fucking point right now. Whoever is the nominee, you get behind. And if it turns out that the DNC is going to sabotage the chances of some people in favor of other people, then you're going to have some deeply resentful people who were resentful back in 2016 crop up in 2020, and regardless of what Donald Trump has done, they will not support the nominee. Because we all have this issue where we feel that we are right. And as much as this country was built on compromise, we just simply can't bring ourselves to compromise. How many Bernie people flocked to Trump after Bernie lost? How many Bernie people flocked to Jill Stein when Bernie didn't get the nomination? I've said this multiple times. This is the Democrats' election to lose. Donald Trump is not going to do anything to inspire people. He's going to get the same 35 to 42% he got last time. And he did not win in a landslide of popular vote. He lost by a couple million. But the key is he won in the places electorally that mattered, that had no Democratic foothold in it for decades. You do not want to relitigate the 2016 election, but sometimes you're forced to when you want to slap people in the face and realize that they're doing fucked up shit. That even if you're not popular in a position, in a place to go and to politic, you go anyway. It's the same reason why it was smart for Democratic candidates to go on Fox News, even though it was so full of people that oppose their viewpoint, that they're conservative and they're against liberals and all that shit. You have to represent. Because if you're not there to represent us as Democrats and as liberals, then you allow that vacuum, that empty space, to be filled with people that will scapegoat, that will stereotype, that will demonize, because there is no voice to say otherwise. Like Fox News. Like the growing octopus that is the Sinclair networks, that's just expanding along the local news sites, local news channels across the country that will have delivered their pro-Trump stance through local news. Local news that is not supposed to be political whatsoever. Somehow will subtly begins to. We already seen that in a couple of months ago. There was some topic. I don't know if it was about the investigation portion of the impeachment, because impeachment was happening yet. But they did this montage where all the news channels that are connected with Sinclair were running the same spot nationwide. They were saying the same script. They montaged it right on screen. It was Orwellian. It was 1984. For me, for me, if people do not stop with this disunity, stop trashing Democrats who are running for office, we're so hell-bent on their own person or persons or man, woman, whatever, that, that they'll get into blood feuds with other candidates before the nomination. They want to be that serious about this. Then Donald Trump's won already. Because whoever is going to be the nominee is going to be attacked and maimed. If it's someone progressive, will not have the support of the DNC initially, and I don't know if they're going to do afterwards, but they better. If it's someone like Joe Biden, who, despite all the other issues that centers around Joe Biden, he is in a physical and unfortunate mental decline because of his age. And people who are hating him as much as they hate Hillary Clinton, are they going to support him if he becomes a nom? Probably not. Which again just simply means that Trump wins. You know, you can point out all the things that Trump has said and has done, is currently doing, that is about to do, that he advertises to do. In his 2020 budget, he plans to gut the National Cancer Institute. That he's seriously going to go and think about to cut Social Security. So eager about this that Republican houses are now around state-wise is starting to think about that. There was a representative bringing it up in Texas. Trump has added 6 more countries to his, or he's going to add 6 more countries to expand his travel ban. A number of them are from shithole countries, from Africa. And in order to push this merit basis, this wealth test on who comes to this country, which again, I find funny because, those grandfathers, those fathers and mothers who came to this country not speaking a word of English, who did not have 2 pennies to run between each other, their grandchild or their son or their daughter advocates for merit-based immigration that their relatives couldn't pass. So the door closes. I guess our golden door closes after they arrived. To explain how an arms deal to Saudi Arabia was more important to Trump than the acknowledgement that Saudi Arabia's crown prince was involved in the killing and dismembering of Jamal Khashoggi, who was an American resident who worked for the Washington Post. Now, his death was not more important than our arms deal. So was the fact that he wanted and is going to use our military. He's going to turn our armed forces into mercenaries for hire for Saudi Arabia, for the kingdom. So our soldiers that defend our way of life are now going to become mercs to defend them and to fight for them. Maybe in their proxy war with Yemen that we're still having a humanitarian crisis over for that war, while they're using our hardware to attack the Yemeni. Now we're going to have our troops do it for them. We can go on and all the things that he has done, but to his supporters, doesn't matter. He's entertaining. Well, I don't like the things that he says. However, I just can't quit him. So the infighting of the Democrats brought me down today. It's breaking the last heart that I have left of idealism for this country, for our system. I'm getting close to being apathetic enough to say just simply fuck it. And leave this mess in the hands of people who don't give a shit anyway. And I remembered a quote made by, and it actually describes one of my favorite comedians, George Carlin. Because George Carlin wasn't always what he was, like people who remember him from the 90s on up. George Carlin had a hopeful, hippie outlook when he first started. When he was going through the 60s into the 70s, we saw the things that were going on, but he kept a bright side of life to it. He commented on it. He gave his honest opinion about it, but it was always a soft view of it. And he went through the 80s, and he went through the 90s, and that ended. And he began to complain more about all the things that were happening, the consumerism that our country was becoming, how we are no longer giving a shit of what the country was doing to us, and it just got more and more cynical. And there was a quotation that said, "Inside every cynic is a disappointed idealist." That was George Carlin. And not to compare, but I'm getting disappointed. There is no oaths of office that is sacred. There is no political duty that is sacred. There is no cause that is worth an honest fight these days. I recounted today a few times that there are so many problems that goes on in our election that could be solved in the off years that we wouldn't have to deal with every time we have an election if someone gave a shit enough to kill it and kill the problem 2 years afterwards, or a year afterward, or 3 years after. Like voter registration. How is it that we hear so much of like these horror stories of people getting turned away or getting their votes, getting voter rolls purged by the hundreds and thousands in these states, that we could not figure it out like in the off years that maybe we should deal with this so we won't have to deal with it in the next election? You know these finagling redistricting where they just redistrict people out of voting booths, vote, where polls are, where they make it harder for someone to even go physically to vote, where they'll kick people off of buses who are picking people up to go to vote, to make voting places disappear entirely, and they have to go farther away to vote. That nonsense should not be happening in election year. That nonsense should have been ended. But again, you got to have the will to do that. And even the people who win nobly and you think are good guys or good gals, they have too much on their plate to fix this if this is a problem within their purview. I wonder if there is a portion inside the Democratic National Convention or the committee or whatever that actually wants Donald Trump to stay in office. Why would I say that? Because you know what's good for business to get donations, to rally money, to have a foil, to have something to point at. You go, that's the problem in your lot of life, and if you just give me some money, you give us some support, that we're going to go and fight that for you. We'll fight it. We won't kill it. We won't remove it. But we'll make it a general nemesis in your life that you will constantly have to fight. So you keep shelling out the money, and we'll put that money in the places that we think matters, but we won't necessarily go and eliminate this threat for you. We'll just keep the threat alive, and we'll just give you some creature comforts for it. We'll give you some reassurance and maybe some sympathy and some fake empathy. Maybe they want Trump to be that foil. It's the same thing as like when Trump uses Hillary Clinton like in every rally. Like Hillary Clinton really fucking matters now. She doesn't matter. She's a retired grandmother living in New York, but somehow he brings her up in rallies. Why? Because it's a good attack line, it's a good applause line, and maybe he can make some donational money off of it. It's the same thing as bringing up Hunter Biden. Again, proof. If they don't investigate him, then all that was politics. Bringing up an impeachment, nothing but politics. Just if it was true how they just wanted Ukraine to announce an investigation, that was more important than actually investigating, that is proof of politics. So bringing up the scandals and the machinations of how this guy was sitting on a gas board, that's your foil to rack up some money. Like McSally calling the CNN reporter a liberal hack. She turned that into a rally cry to get herself some money. Another foil. So maybe, how cynical is it to think that maybe this whole thing is just demonize people for the money, but don't really do anything about it, because if you eliminate the problem, then you can't get any more money from it. You can't get any more money to blame someone and make someone afraid of it and telling you who's to blame for it. I reverse that, but whatever. I am no longer helpless or hopeless. I'm not helpless because this is my voice. This is what I do. This is what a lot of people do, who go on YouTube and they do their rant or they do their analysis, and people like me who are barely blips on YouTube, who can maybe scrounge up a dozen people at a time. That's fine. This is more of a cathartic thing for me anyway. But it is my way of venting out into the void. I'm not hopeless anymore. I've returned to being pissed. And just because I'm disappointed doesn't mean I give up. And no amount of futility into mentioning the sins and bullshit and evil that this president does, that the people around him do, that hurt people in this country and abroad, no matter how futile that is, I'm not going to stop doing it. So if you're tired of hearing it, no one is compelling you to hear it. Tired of seeing it from me? Scroll away. Or block. That's a lovely snowflake answer. I can't handle it anymore. Cancel culture. I've never blocked a person. I'd rather keep the communication open. But that is where I'm at. That was my day. I may do another video when they finally release whatever results there is going to be from Iowa. I am the ranter. And I rant because my urge to rant rises. The day I stop ranting is the day I stop caring. And, you know, it may be dramatic, but it's not about caring about who's president. Because the person in this seat doesn't matter as much as what the actions are done while in that seat. What I care about is the people that get hurt, the people that get disillusioned, the people that don't think it matters, the people who think in a land that's supposed to tout about justice will never see justice for themselves, that don't have a voice. My voice, in the grand scheme of things, is a whisper in a heavy wind. If you listen hard enough, you'll hear it. And you'll hear people like me doing the same exact thing on all sides of the scale, from liberals to conservatives to moderates, because all of us, right, left, center, we are Americans. And no matter how much politicians on either side wants to divide us, we are all Americans. And when you want to go globally, we are all human beings. You know? That's why I enjoy the site Middle America that I go on Facebook, as an offshoot of Vin and Story, which is on YouTube. Check them out. And not only it's good for the politics of Middle America, but they're very damn good at doing first time reacting to songs. You got to listen to some of them. Some of the songs that that probably you and I are very accustomed to, for whatever reason they've never heard, and watching their honest reaction to it is sweet. In that, you know, it's the first time they heard music. I mean, they've heard a whole bunch of music, but just all these things that sort of commonplace for some of us and they never heard. It's like watching the amazement on their face when they hear a great chord or some great lyrics and thought-provoking lyrics, and they're actually thinking about. So Vin and Story is awesome. They don't agree with me on my politics, and I barely agree with them on their politics, and that's a good thing. And the reason why that's a good thing, because we're Americans, and we can disagree, but we don't go to our separate little corners of our little safe spaces and only talk to people that we agree with. Vin's my friend. Soren's my friend. I think. So that shameless self-promotion of me being in Middle America. All right, guys. I will be back later, probably when they finally do the results. Incidentally, if you're ever watching any of this coverage of it and you notice the crawl that has all these voting potentials, those are not results. They have the most ridiculous categories on how they're dicing up the voters and what they're thinking about and what they're doing, and it's like this is just to pad the whole broadcast because they have no results. Okay, guys, I'll talk to you later. The Rancher will be back later. I don't know. I have no way to end this. So, all right.